What's going on, you guys? Welcome, friends. Welcome, family. It's the Watchlist live. It's on a Monday. For some reason, my tab is not working where I get to see you guys jump in here. So we might be jumping a little bit sooner than I thought. Hopefully, you guys are still able to come in, join us, discuss some things amongst each other. But at this current moment, I can't see what you guys are doing. Apparently, it's a YouTube issue with me seeing some of the comments and some of the discussions you guys may have. But again, Monday, happy 4th of July weekend that you guys just came off of. Hope it was happy, healthy, and at least a little bit of a reminder of what it is that we're looking for as we go into this election season, continuing into this election season, what is really at stake. Maybe it'll trigger again to see what you guys are doing. But let's jump right in this because we've been talking about, of course, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, the presidential election, maybe even a little bit more importantly, what's going on with Joe Biden. It's been what, almost 2 weeks since that debate performance that has been the narrative of the campaign. Not much else about anything else. Some trickle-ins here and there about more that Donald Trump is doing, some other things that maybe Joe Biden's policies as well. But we're not really talking about either one of their policies at this point, good or bad, because we're still talking about whether or not Joe Biden is going to make it to the end of this campaign, into another presidency, if he's able to win this. So there's a lot of panic voices, as we already know, within the Democratic Party. I've been talking about it in pieces here and there. It's caused a lot of anger from people, not specifically me, but it's caused a lot of anger from people just that the discussion is happening about Biden since then and whether or not something drastic needs to be done. There's something new that just popped up, though. I will read from this a little bit because there was some visits from doctors at the White House, 3 in the past year, they said, about specifically a Parkinson's disease specialist. Before you get too alarmed, there's explanations here. I'm gonna read from this CNN article that talks about it. Because apparently there's a top Parkinson's disease specialist. They held a meeting with President Joe Biden's physician at the White House earlier this year. It's according to some records, public records about who visits and comes in. His name is Dr. Kevin Kennard. He's a neurologist at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Of course, they're the ones who always deal with presidents and their health issues or just normal checkups, which is exactly what the White House was saying this was. Now, they said that there was visit logs that showed January 17th, a meeting with O'Connor, that doctor. O'Connor, Kevin O'Connor is the White House physician, met with this specialist who came in potentially to talk about Parkinson's. So, of course, everyone's linking it to the president on this. They said on January 17th he met, January 26th, and March 28th. That's just this year. They said over the past calendar year, though, since maybe last August, it's been another visit also as well. Raises even more questions about whether or not they're going to do anything different when it comes to Joe Biden. He went on a flurry this morning, sent a letter to Democrats that are doubting his ability to run. If you guys aren't on me, Democrats doubting his ability to run, saying he's defiantly staying in the race. Nobody's getting me out of here. These elitists aren't going to kick me out of this race. So it's getting a little bit more contentious among folks within the party, from voters and supporters and anti-Biden stuff. Folks, it's all getting a lot more angry because no one really knows what's going to happen. They don't know if it's a good decision to stay in. Many people feel that it is. But when you get reports like this and more media figures from MSNBC, CNN anchors, and reporters and correspondents, all still talking about whether or not he should be continuing on, to the point where it kind of doesn't do him much good to talk about anything else, which of course he is. He's got to quell those concerns. But there was one particular former congressman that's been pretty vocal. I mean, I know they were saying some names should come out and say who it is that they're in opposition to Joe Biden's candidacy, or at least him being there as they run. And he was talking about potential replacements for him. And I don't think we'd be too surprised at this particular name. Even though it's an obvious name, people have been floating it as much as I would assume. I want to go to what Tim Ryan was talking about this really fast with you guys.
Republicans are out targeting Vice President Kamala Harris, clearly hedging against the possibility that Harris will step in to take President Biden's spot if Biden were to end his campaign. To that end, new Reuters Ipsos polling shows that in a hypothetical matchup against Trump, Harris outperforms 4 states, losing to Trump by just 1 percentage point. That is perhaps why at least one Democrat is on the record saying Kamala Harris should be the Democratic nominee for president in 2024.
What do you know?
Joining me now is that Democrat, Tim Ryan, former congressman from Ohio. Tim, it is good to see you this evening. Thanks for being here tonight. Let's just get right to your argument. Why Kamala Harris?
Well, we need a generational change. I mean, there's no question about that. I think you look at what they call the double haters. They don't want Biden. They don't want Trump. I think it's really important that we give them an alternative. So there'd be the huge generational change. You look at the practical politics of the situation. Look where we're bleeding out. We're soft with a lot of the minority communities, and we're bleeding out young people. And I think Kamala could come in instantaneously, juice our base, pull in young people. I've been getting calls from Ohio that want, working class people. They want Biden to step down, and they're telling me they'd be excited for a Kamala Harris run. So I think she checks a lot of these boxes. And you take the choice issue just real quick. I think there's so much at stake for women. For her to be able to prosecute that issue for us in a debate against Donald Trump, I think that, you add all that together, and I think we're back in the game, and we could make a good run at this thing.
So Tim Ryan's first thought: Kamala Harris can make a good run at this. She's a woman. She can talk about women's reproductive rights. That, of course, is on the ballot as well. It's been that way ever since Donald Trump has been bragging about placing enough of these conservative justices on the Supreme Court to eliminate just that, which, of course, he backed up slightly off of that as well, too. But the thought being, there's Kamala Harris. She ran a pretty good debate performance last time when she went up against Joe Biden, kicked his ass around a little bit before he then eventually won that nomination and picked her up as far as a running mate. Maybe she can go back to performing again. This is what I've always been wondering about Kamala Harris and just the Democratic Party, more importantly, the administration. They haven't really had her out front. Maybe I've missed it. I'm sure she's done events. I've seen her at some events doing some speaking engagements and talking about the president's agenda and the administration and what they're going forward with. But they don't tend to really lean on her. Maybe most vice presidents don't really get much airtime and face time. But when it comes to the criticisms and the questions and wondering of whether or not Joe Biden, even before all this debate performance stuff, there's always been talk about it, specifically from conservatives, about whether or not Joe Biden is making enough appearances. How they were saying he's hiding in the basement, not doing debate, not doing rallies and things like that. That maybe would have been the time to have her come forward, but you couldn't do that then either, because it looks like you're bringing her forward because Joe Biden can't do it. There's so many lose-lose situations here that Democrats have to deal with when it comes to deciding one way or another what they're doing with this. It's going to anger some folks in some form or fashion. Who knows the degree of I guess, electoral ability that Kamala Harris has, because we haven't seen her go out front and see what Democrats really think of her as far as running again or stepping in these kinds of situations. But they did talk about some of those chances and some of the ways that she can potentially be stepping in. But some of those other folks that they floated, from Gavin Newsom to Pritzker, I believe, she had the best chances. Again, still losing to Trump, but by a little bit. The question then came is whether or not she's a good candidate for it. Let's let more of these questions and answers too.
Do you think it's a different moment than it was in 2020 when she did throw her hat in the ring for the presidential nomination and was out before Iowa?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, you're better at your job 3.5 years later. Most Americans who do something for 3.5 years, especially at a very high level, you get better, you grow, you become seasoned. She's already has a lot of raw talent and ability and charisma. And presidential campaigns are pretty tough, so that's a heck of a standard. But I think it culminated for me in my mind, Alex, to really start thinking about this, was how she handled herself on debate night. Absolute star. I mean, I followed her. I was so enamored. I followed her across all the cable stations as she was doing her interviews, and she was masterful. And I think that's the culmination of 3.5 years. So to me, it's like, what are we waiting for? We have a very good candidate here. Let's help her grow into the campaign. And I think it would be a great move for Biden to kind of set up somebody like Kamala Harris as the crowning jewel of what is this really significant on presidency.
So I've been going after Kamala Harris as far as opposition, the Republican Party, going after Kamala Harris since she was selected. They know it's kind of an easy target. I mean, there's the two blows you already got. There's enough folks that dislike women in positions of power and authority, and there's also people who dislike black folks in a position of power and authority. So you got black women there, and that's an issue for a lot of these folks. They're probably concerned about putting her front facing in case there's more people that would have those problems that don't really want to say it out loud. Maybe that's one of the hurdles that they're facing. Tim Ryan says he sees a lot of possibilities with her. There's another aspect of this I did also. So I'm gonna stop sharing this for a minute to show you guys this. There was political polls. I know you guys can't see me for a second. Political polls were saying on Twitter, X, that Biden still has a chance in all these states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania. Those are some of the battleground states that they would be concerned with, and he still has a chance. Look at the polls. Not many people, but fewer people are really thinking about polls like that as reasons behind either throwing their support behind someone or being ensured that there's still a good chance. I'm sure polls tell a lot. Where I land on it is probably take it as a 50-50. Of course, polls still mean something, but you also have to understand what it is that's going to come off as. They're going up against Donald Trump, who's declared his dictatorial views, who's been backed by the Project 2025 stuff, which has declared even more how to implement these dictatorial views and the kind of administration that he'd like to run, which apparently would run on forever, where he can do whatever the hell he wants. That's what they've been talking about. That's what they've been pushing. It's all obvious and right in front of our faces. I don't think many people who are paying attention to this would be missing those obvious notes and those factors to this entire race. So running someone else from folks who said which I think Whoopi Goldberg this morning or maybe over the last week said she'd be willing to vote for Biden. I don't care if he pooped his pants. Other folks talking about I'd vote for a corpse over Donald Trump. So there's those people that are solidly in. So whether Kamala Harris is in or someone else, they're in. What they're unable to really see is who and how many folks are swayed by something like that performance. I don't see many people who are supporting Joe Biden, whether they're conservative, middle ground, or Democratic, would then say, "Oh, Joe Biden couldn't come up with a way to come up with a sentence to refute Trump's lies." I believe everything Trump is saying now. I don't think it really works that way. They're way too far apart on what people perceive their agendas to be once they get into office. So you're not losing too many by switching candidates over that. But maybe you're losing some Democratic voters who are mad that you're getting rid of their guy. How solidly stuck are they with one guy versus, say, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, anyone else? Because they're probably upset that people are jumping ship so fast and so definitively. You have to worry about those folks. There's no good answer here. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but in all the times I've talked about this, there's no definitive way I've gone about my opinion about it, because really we don't know. That's why everybody's panicking. That's where everyone's so scared. That's when everyone has these definitive answers, because no one knows. You won't know until someone wins or loses on election day. That's where Democrats are panicking, and that's where they really don't know what's going down. But there was one other person that responded to those polls that talk about how Biden still has a chance. And they did point out that, how does polling work again? I think they still call people's landlines. What percentage of voters now, especially say younger voters, have landlines and then are answering their phones. Of course, they're probably calling people's cell phone numbers as well. But like I think most folks, nobody's answering cell phone calls from random numbers. And if they hear someone saying, "Oh, I'm calling about a poll," hang up. They don't know which kinds of fraudulent calls are happening. Phishing for information calls are happening. People don't trust phone calls anymore unless they know who's calling them. I don't know if there's some new updated way that these polling places and are finding ways to push their polling or come up with accurate polling, but I wonder how accurate it is at this point, because as technology increases, it's exponential with how quickly people change with it. So it could have been as recent as last year. I don't have any real numbers. Last year and the year before, when polling was maybe more accurate because of this style of polling, it probably changed a lot just in a couple of years, and the degree to which people aren't answering those calls. Even more unsure answers to how this may pan out and whether or not they can depend on those things in making their decision. Joe Biden was screaming today when on Morning Joe put out letters and everything saying he's not going anywhere. That's okay, I guess, if that's their decision, but what's that based on is the question. They must have more resources than I do, which is why I'm still sitting on them. I'm not sure. But I doubt a lot of people would jump ship strictly because it's someone else, or maybe even because it's him. What they need to hear more about is these plans from Donald Trump, who, by the way, has been doing nothing for like 11 days since that debate to make sure maybe a rally or two. I mean, like nothing as far as going hardcore at Joe Biden or making all these normal declarative statements and talking about the destruction he's going to do to the country. He's sitting back and letting the fight happen. But I do think there's enough time for that fight to be adjudicated. They figure it out and go back to campaigning like normal. Maybe you guys disagree. Maybe you agree. I can't tell because the chat isn't popping up from me. We'll find out later when I talk to you guys, though. Good to see you. Happy Monday. Again, we'll be back a few more times this week because this is going to go crazy. Right before next week being the RNC convention, where plenty of people are going to be taking the stage, from celebrities to surrogates of Trump to, I guess, of course, Trump himself at the end of the week to accept that nomination. And the other big news is who he's going to choose for VP, for his running mate. We'll see all that. But until then, Joe Biden's going to be fighting these types of reports about Parkinson's and who's going to replace him and how defiant he's going to be for at least another week is the main story. Sorry, that's kind of the way it is when you have a debate performance like that. We'll see you guys next time. Good to see you. Holla at you. Bye.